Hi, I'm Britt.
And my name is Alissa.
And this is SkeleTales.
And this is the podcast where we strive to answer the age-old question of, is my dead grandma watching me?
We do. We also tell tales. No, we also share true tales of the strange, unusual, and paranormal.
Heck yeah, we do. Maybe this week we're talking about, am I my dead grandma watching me? Because we're talking about reincarnation. Are you my dead grandma?
I might be.
You might be. Well, yeah, maybe the math doesn't work out on that. But some people have very compelling stories that do support this idea of reincarnation, and possibly one of our favorite topics. There's some overlap between creepy things kids say and reincarnation, because most of my
Very
stories...
much so. Yes.
Okay, so there are people who actually study this phenomena in an academic setting, specifically the Division of Perceptual Studies at the Department of Psychiatry and Neurobehavioral Sciences at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. So, that's got some cred. So there's research papers where people...
Yeah, this isn't just some ding-dongs being like, oh, what was your past life like? Like, these are doctors.
Right. And because some kids get really upset about this, it's not just a cute passing creepy fancy. It's like they become very distraught and upset and attached to this life that they remember living before they were in their current body. So There's a few case studies that Dr. Jim B. Tucker talks about, Children's Reports of Past Life Memories, a review. And so I will just read you a few of those to start off, to kick it off. The
Brilliant.
Case of PM. PM is a boy born with 3 birthmarks that appeared to match lesions on his half-brother, who had died with neuroblastoma 12 years before the birth of PM. The illness was diagnosed after the half-brother began limping. He then suffered a pathological fracture of his left tibia. He underwent a biopsy of a nodule on his scalp above his right ear and received chemotherapy through a central line in his right external jugular vein. At the time of his death, at 2 years of age, he was blind in his left eye. PM was born with a swelling 1 centimeter in diameter above his right ear, a dark slanting mark on his lower right anterior surface of his neck. He also had a corneal leukoma that caused him to be virtually blind in his left eye. In addition, he limped when he learned to walk, as if sparing his left leg. At around the age of 4.5 years, PM talked to his mother about wanting to return to the family's previous home, which he described accurately, and also told of the scalp surgery that his half-brother had undergone.
What?
So
you said it was 12-year
it was 12
difference
years
from when
after.
the half-brother died and he was born.
Right. And he described the house that his half-brother lived in, and they lived in, but he didn't live in that at all. So then the case of Sam Taylor. Sam Taylor was born 18 months after his paternal grandfather died. When he was 1.5 years, he looked up at his father, who was changing his diaper, and said, "When I was your age, I used to change your diapers." He began talking more about having been his grandfather. He eventually told details of his grandfather's life that his parents felt certain he could not have learned through normal means, such as the fact that his grandfather's sister had been murdered and that his grandmother had used a food processor to make milkshakes for his grandfather every day at the end of his life. When Sam was 4.5 years old, his grandmother died, and his father went out to take care of her estate and then returned home with a group of family pictures. Sam's mother had them spread out one evening when Sam began pointing at pictures of his grandfather and saying, "That's me." To test him, his mother showed him a class picture that included 16 boys, and Sam was able to pick his grandfather out of the group.
Whoa, that's so cool.
It is. That one gives me goosebumps because it's hard to pick out kids that you're related to. If you give a class picture, I can very easily be convinced that, oh yeah, that's my relative. And then it's actually Schleppo over in the corner. I'm like, ah, shit. So that is not an easy task. Okay. And then
before you read the next one, I just have to comment and say that I love that these reincarnation stories have stayed within the family. The half-brother, the grandfather, it's so kind of comforting in a way that like, oh, like maybe my grandmother could be my niece,
right?
or, you know, a future niece that isn't born yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Or nephew, or yeah.
Well, and like very like scientifically now, the idea of transgenerational trauma is like, it's in your DNA. It alters your DNA. Like they see genetic changes in people's physiological beings, their anatomy, their heart strength. I want to say that people whose families had gone through famine in the past couple generations now have stronger hearts, directly related to that famine that happened 2 generations before. So if your body can physically like remember that famine and protect against it in future generations, why can it's not absurd that memories could also be transferred down the line. So I don't know if that's exactly reincarnation. Kind of. I don't know. I guess it depends on the definition of reincarnation. This one is not a family member. And so then the last one is about Chennai Chumalaiwang, a boy from Thailand. When he was
Thailand.
I know, Thailand. I got really into that, the pronunciation there. When he was 3 years old, he began saying that he had been a teacher named Bua Kai, who had been shot and killed one day as he rode his bicycle to school. He begged to be taken to his parents, that is, Bua Kai's parents, and he named the village where he said they lived. Eventually, he and his grandmother took a bus that stopped in a town near the village. His grandmother reported that after they got off the bus, Chennai led her to a house where an older couple lived. Chennai appeared to recognize the couple, who were the parents of Bua Kai Lawanak, a teacher who had been shot and killed on the way to school 5 years before Chennai was born. No autopsy report was available for Bua Kai Lawanak, so Stevenson interviewed witnesses who saw the body. His widow reported that the doctor involved in the case said that her husband had been shot from behind because the small round wound on the back of his head was a typical entry wound, whereas the larger, more irregularly shaped wound on his forehead was typical of an exit wound. Chennai, the little boy, was born with 2 birthmarks, a small round birthmark on the back of his head and a larger, more irregularly shaped one toward the front.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. How old was the little boy? How old was Chennai? Did it say?
3.
3 when he went. Oh, that's wild.
I'm not sure who this Stevenson fella who got like thrown in the middle of this was, but it was, again, from this Dr. Tucker of the UVA. That was this source. But yeah, this story of birthmarks, like, it definitely makes me wonder about any of my birthmarks, but I don't have any major ones. Do you have any, like, crazy birthmarks?
I don't have crazy birthmarks. I have, like, you know, freckles and moles and things, but I don't. My brother has a big one on his leg, and now I'm like, ooh, was he shot in battle?
Possibly, right?
In a past life. It is.
Definitely.
It is compelling, fascinating. Ooh, good stories.
Okay, well, I'm dying to hear what you got because I need to know.
I found this story by Derek. He says, so many years ago when my dad was a very small child, 4 to 5 years old, he would talk about being someone else in a different life. Him and his many siblings were born in Chicago and lived there for many years. He would tell his parents that he remembered being an older man dressed in a suit, real fancy kind of guy. He said he remembers walking into some sort of apartment building, going towards a long staircase. He remembers walking a few steps up, and a man appears at the top of the stairs, pulled out a gun, and shot him in the stomach. He said he tried to get out his gun to fire back, but he was stumbling due to being shot. He fell back the few steps that he'd taken and hit the floor on his back. He said he remembers blood everywhere. His suit was soaked. He was holding his stomach and felt the pain from the bullet. Lying on his back, looking up, he remembers the man walking past him, stopping for a minute to make sure that he'd finished the job, and walked away. As he felt his body relaxing, he remembers a very, very bright light appearing. That was all he could see was light. Then he started to hear voices, muffled. They were getting louder and louder as the light was brighter. He says within a few minutes he could see clearly that he was in a hospital being reborn. He said he was screaming and freaking out, but no one could understand him. At that time, he remembers going to his new family as a newborn. He recalled the people that were there at the time of his birth. His mother confirmed later that those were the exact people who were there. As the years went on, he would talk about different buildings that he'd been to and people he knew that had been dead for many years. Of course, his parents thought it was all the imagination of a small child. A very interesting thing was his stepdad would have him help work on cars and different things and would ask for a crescent wrench or a 3/8 drive ratchet. I don't even know what that's. And he would know exactly which tools were what, something a 4-year-old really shouldn't know. Fast forward several years. My dad was born in the 1940s, so now he's much older, and it's the 1980s. As he got older, the memories went away to a certain extent, and life moved on. The family kind of forgot about his wild tales from when he was small. During this time in the 80s, he suffered a hernia that required surgery. After the surgery, he was in recovery, and the doctor came in to check on him to let him know all that he did and how it went. Before the doctor left the room, he stopped and said, "You're a very lucky man." My dad was confused and asked, "Why? What do you mean?" The doctor tells him that he noticed the scar tissue in the stomach from a bullet wound and can't believe that he'd actually survived such a thing. My dad had told the doctor that he'd never been shot, and the doctor kind of chuckles and says, "Oh, yeah. The medical records report of a bullet wound in my dad's stomach. The doctor was 100% convinced. He assumed my dad wasn't telling him that he had been shot due to the fact that he was in Chicago and not being in a nice part of town. The doctor would bet his career on it because he had dealt with bullet wounds on almost a daily basis. So I found this story online. And the son ends up trying to find out who his past life dad was, researching, gunshot wounds, apartment murders, all of these things. But he says that it was in the 1940s and in Chicago, and people were getting shot all the time, and they're not great at keeping records. And so he never found out who his father was in his previous life.
That's wild. So there is this running theme of like scars that reflect the previous life.
Even in an internal basis.
That is wild.
So in the comment section from this online post, there is a woman who commented, and it made me think of a story you told me. She says, I had a client who was 12. This woman does past life regression, hypnosis or therapy or something. I had a client who was 12. He had very vivid memories of his last life. He talked a lot about his sister Molly, who had drowned in a pond, and that he had also died of a gunshot wound. His memory was similar to your dad, being shot, feeling very calm, no bright light, but going through a tunnel. But instead of ending up in a hospital being born, he went straight to his 3rd or 4th birthday party, suddenly sitting at the table, looking around at everybody, knowing that this was his family, but not really knowing much else. Still very attached to the life that he had just left.
Like Milo coming into his body.
Milo coming into his body. And then, I'm telling you, I listened and read a lot of stories yesterday. Then I found another comment that somebody made on a different story. But this person says that they're a teacher, and at lunch, one of the kindergarten students looked confused, and I asked him what was wrong. He said that he used to be a 65-year-old man, and now I'm here. Like he had just come into his body in kindergarten.
Wild. I mean, that's what it sounds like to hear Milo talk of it too.
Yes, like when I came into my body, I just thought it was like, oh, Milo's adorable and imaginative. No, it's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah, and he says it so matter of fact. He's like, oh, well, that's when I came in my body. I can't remember. He did tell me the exact like moment like that he remembers, his first moment where he like remembers being in his body. But I don't know if I don't feel like he told me anything crazy beforehand, like that made me think, oh my God, this kid is like, this is an old man trapped in a little 2-year-old's body. But he did have like imaginary friends, and he went to an imaginary place. He had this house that he would always talk about that, like, oh, at my weapon house is what he called it. But I don't know what that is.
Whoa.
He's like, he called it a weapon house, and it was in the woods, and he would talk about it all the time and go on a big, like, creative, quote unquote. Maybe he's just like telling us what happened there. So I don't know. Maybe the weapon house really was someplace that he lived in his previous life.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
And then if it is a weapon house, maybe he was like, I guess, killed there, because it does seem like a lot of these have traumatic endings. So I found this
yes.
quick little list of 12 mind-blowing facts from scientists who study reincarnation. Real quick, I'll burn through these. It says 33% of Americans believe in reincarnation. Okay, sure. 65% more people believe in reincarnation now compared to 20 years ago. I wonder if that's because we've heard more of these stories, or because people are not so indoctrinated with specific religions as they used to be. I mean,
we've got media now.
Yes.
We can hear the stories and share the stories.
Right. Yeah,
like
exactly.
We could not do that long ago.
36% of Catholics believe in reincarnation. Reincarnation is central to the beliefs of many Eastern religions, but it's very popular among Catholics and Christians too. That's an interesting fact, I guess. Okay, so number 4, 70% of people who remember a past life remember dying a violent or unnatural death. And again, this is
70%.
70%. So this is the Dr. Jim Tucker. Of over 2,000 cases that he studied, 30% involved natural deaths. However, the remaining 70% of the cases where the past life ended in an accidental or unnatural death, a whopping 73% of those cases involved males. And these percentages mirror death statistics almost perfectly. Far more men than women die unnaturally. Men tend to have more dangerous jobs, fight in wars, and get into more bar fights. Therefore, Dr. Tucker reasoned that someone may be more likely to remember a past life if it ended in a violent or unnatural death.
Interesting.
9% of people who remember a past life exhibit an unusual skill related to that former life. Like if they're a natural, people tend to be like a good pianist or something, and they'll remember a past life of being a pianist. I just like saying the word pianist.
I wasn't going to say anything.
What is that, right? Is it pianist?
Pianist.
My mom always said pianist.
Now it sounds fantastic.
My mom always said pianist, and so
pianist.
I will just create.
Now, how do you say it?
It's a pianist.
Pianist. I don't know.
Pianist.
Pianist.
The actual example is a guitar, but pianist is just
it's funner to say.
Okay. 35% of people remember dying accidentally in a past life have an extreme fear of dying the same way again. So if they died in a airplane crash, they're very scared to fly. If they died, swimming, they're very scared of the water. 26% of people who remember a past life demonstrate some other form of ESP. Psychiatrist Dr. Jim Tucker has written about the unexplained psychic abilities of people he investigated who recall living before. Perhaps further research will reveal a link between past life memory and clairvoyance.
Ooh, interesting.
20% of people who remember a past life believe they've lived as a deceased family member. So we've just
20. That's 20. Pretty good.
Yeah. Actually, maybe that's surprisingly low based on the 2 stories I read. 3 stories.
If you can validate, is that the word I'm looking at? Yeah. You can validate family ones easier because you've got the family album to be like, and that person's personality. Oh, that they liked their smoothies done in a food processor. You know, the little details can be validated a little bit more than, say, a stranger.
Right. I guess since we were talking about the DNA angle, I would have assumed maybe more of a family. It would be a higher percent. Almost 80% I would think were family and 20 would be strangers. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my just non-scientific guess of it. I don't know. 58% of people who remember drowning in a past life have an extreme fear of water. All right. 23% of people who remember a past life believe they once lived as a different gender.
What percentage was that again?
23%.
As a different gender. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it says perhaps this is evidence for a universal soul that can express itself as any or all genders, regardless of the body's anatomical gender.
Yeah.
20% of people who remember a past life also remember something from the time between death and rebirth.
Yes.
So like sometimes people report having witnessed the funeral of their own past life identity. And if you have even accurately provided details that seemed impossible for them to have known, others have described a more ethereal experience in a sort of spirit realm while in between lifetimes. One boy claimed he'd met a distant relative who died many years before while in this realm, waiting to be reborn. In another case, a child claimed he'd chosen his mother while watching her on vacation in Hawaii, more than a year before the woman even became pregnant.
That's so cool.
And then 2% of people who remember a past life can accurately describe their previous funeral. While rare, this phenomenon is no less fascinating. Researchers found that 25 out of 1,100 cases of people remembering a past life, the subjects shared eerily accurate details of their previous identity's funeral. They claimed to have been there, watching the ceremony unfold, even though they no longer inhabited their former body. According to the extensive research documented by the late Dr. Ian Stevenson, one girl named Ratana was upset because her family had scattered the ashes of her former identity rather than burying them. She even knew the precise spot where they had done it, under the bow tree inside the temple complex. And so then when they went to the mother who buried the original body, they said that she had tried to bury it, but the roots were too thick. They couldn't actually dig up the area where she wanted to be buried. And so they scattered the ashes.
They had to do oh, interesting.
Yes. So those are like very common themes. Wait, that didn't even mention the birthmark, which I feel like is now like one of the most common things we've been hearing.
Yeah. What percentage?
Okay. 13 facts. There's no percentages, but those are the running themes. So what interests me a lot about that is that kind of in between time, like you said, like when they come into their body.
Yes,
and
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was thinking about that with my story from Derek about his dad getting shot. He sees the light, and all of a sudden the light is from being born in the hospital.
Right?
Of that, like, is the light we're seeing at death actually just the light of the vagina?
The vagina hole?
You're going through a tunnel. People talk about going through tunnels.
Yes. And if you go to the light, like your new life starts. But if you don't go towards the light, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. That would kind of explain like stillbirths and stuff. Like if you really want to get down to it, like that shit does happen. It's really sad. It doesn't seem like there's a meaning, but
that's what happens when you don't go through the tunnel towards the light. Okay. What do you have? What do you have about this in-between stage, though?
So I came upon a story that was not even a story. It was kind of like just creepy things that kids had said and different experiences. And one of them was that a little boy said, I waited for 7 years at the roots of this tree where my body was for you, to his mom. And when I saw you walk by, I decided you're the one, you're the mom I want. And like he'd gotten killed and his body sat there, and he just sat there and waited by this tree for whatever, 7 years, I guess, until he saw this woman and jumped on in. Or like that one that said that I was in Hawaii, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The mom was in Hawaii and he saw her when she was in Hawaii and decided that's my mom. So like this idea too, where these souls are kind of just chilling out, waiting and picking a person.
whenever I think about the ones where it's like, I was watching you and I picked you, I have this vision of like being up in the clouds and there's like a TV screen or something, or like a little screen looking down onto the planet. And it's like, oh, she seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've not really ever thought about like a spirit kind of lingering in the place where they're buried or dead and having them attach and then be born.
I know. It kind of is like
that
creepy.
That makes me wonder, like, are our children, were they just like hanging out?
Yeah, right.
Should all pregnant women avoid cemeteries?
Exactly. Is that like eating lunch meat? Avoid cemeteries. Don't eat lunch meat. Don't
sushi. No sushi.
No sushi. No cemeteries. Just slide that in there. I don't know. But then it also made me think that if there's like a bad spirit or whatever, that like, is that why some people are just seem bad and born bad and they've just always been a bad egg? I don't know. Like, so,
oh my gosh.
I meant to look up like what the goal of reincarnation is, right? Because I think you relive your life over and over again. Are you trying to like level up to nirvana?
Different religions have different perceptions of that. Hindus, Buddhists, lots more believe in reincarnation, and each have their own interpretation.
And like, are you forced to relive like your experiences until you like figure it out or something, or you take on different challenges? That's some of the goal of
I'm not knowledgeable enough in that area. I know that, obviously there's the karma thing of like, do good and in your next life you'll be in a good life, better life, or whatever.
So that's where I'm thinking, if it is really a shitty evil spirit hanging around, like would they, I feel like
they're going to be a
slug
beetle.
Yeah. They get like the shit body. They don't get to pick like someone good. I don't know. I mean, obviously.
I don't know the rules, Alissa.
We don't know the rules. We just like the creepy shit people tell us. Okay. I'm going to tell you one more here. I don't believe in the paranormal. I'm a pretty reasonable guy. I have degrees in science and healthcare, and I'm pretty grounded. But since I was a child, I had a memory of me stumbling out the back door of a club. I couldn't hold myself, either really drunk or on drugs, and I slipped down a staircase, hit my head in the alley, and died. I was about 19. I was thin, had long blonde hair. I was wearing a brown-red leather jacket. I remember the neon signs, the staircase, the door I walked out of, even the interior. I can paint the picture perfectly if I had any talent in art. Anyways, so 2 years ago, I took a leisure trip to Budapest, and while exploring the ruined pubs with my wife, I found the fucking alley. It was funny because I remarked to my wife earlier when we arrived that I felt something about Budapest that felt like home and familiar, and I felt oddly too comfortable there, like I could have never left. I think about this quite often.
Whoa, found where they died. Oh, that is fascinating.
The odds of that are not good, but that is very fascinating, right? Like, or maybe it is good because it's all fate and he was always.
Maybe they were even drawn to vacation in Budapest because of the familiarity.
Yeah. I've not gone to like home countries before. Like I always wonder if I go back to Ireland or Lithuania or somewhere like that, if I will suddenly feel like a sense of or remember it somehow,
Yeah.
It would be cool as shit if you could just speak another language that was passed along. That would be convincing.
I read one of those stories of a child who was born, claimed to be from Russia, and would sing a lullaby in Russian.
Okay, right? Like that is pretty fucking compelling because that's not something.
A toddler doing that.
What?
All right, here's a question for you.
Okay.
What do you think? If knowing your habits, your scars, your phobias, all of the things you love, the things you hate, what do you think that you would have been in a past life?
Like how I would have died possibly, or what I would have been. I
Both.
definitely I feel like, okay. I don't have any real scars that are like transitional. I do have a lot of freckles. So we talked about, I cut it from the last episode, but possibly shrapnel. Like if freckles are any, like I do have, and actually like a strange line of them. Like you could connect the dots and they just like boop, 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 boop. So possibly I was like shot with like a machine gun or something.
Or sutured up there or something.
Or nailed to the cross, nailed to something.
You're
possibly.
Jesus.
I mean, the hair, right? But I don't like the ocean. I'm scared of the ocean. I'm scared of water, so maybe something to do with water, but I grew up in the water and I feel like that fear is not ingrained in me. I think that fear came from Jaws. Essentially, if I had to sum it up in one place. The thing that I cannot explain is I have a paralyzing fear of heights that I have never experienced. I don't have a reason to fear heights as I do. Like I'll go on a ropes course as long as I'm like kind of roped off. I'll do a zip line. I'll do this and that, but get me up on a ladder and I am like weak in the knees, like can't move. I need a helicopter to come rescue me from my roof. Like, no, it's not even once I'm on the roof. It's like a ladder. If I'm in that level of uncertainty and the transition. Also, we have this railroad track that near the old Twin Peaks site. I should have taken you there. It's fucking terrifying. It starts out like it's a path, like just a walk along an old train trestle. You're like, this is cool. And then eventually it just starts to rot away and degrade. It's like missing a board here and missing a board there. And then you're just like, oh, like every step I take, I feel like I'm just going to fall through. And I've gotten the fear in me there where I'm like, I literally can't move. I really think I need to get rescued from here. So something possibly to do with heights, possibly a fall. Okay. Because that is the one thing that I never freeze like that. And that like, I can't will myself. Like it's so to take another step based on nothing. Like I've never had a fall. Like I've never had any experience that would make me fear heights like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay.
So I don't know. Steelworker? I don't know.
Could be.
What about you?
Could be.
What about you?
All my phobias are pretty logical. Escalator, cockroaches.
Escalator, okay. Not
but
normal.
I don't feel so phobia that I would freeze on an escalator. It's just like those jagged knives at my feet. You know, the thing, I have had several dreams of drowning. Okay. And this could be because I had that experience as a young kid, almost drowning with my brother out in the lake. Listen to that episode. And I wonder if that's connected, but I don't have a fear of water. I do have a fear of my children drowning. That's like my number one fear of like,
that's normal.
So, yeah, I think that is all normal. I don't know. I feel like if I were, I think I would be my great grandmother who lived in Splendora, Texas. I think we told a story about her house, not necessarily about her, but my grandma's described her and she's just like a very caring person and fun to be around. And I'm like, you know what? I could be her. Although she had a huge mole on her cheek and I don't have one of those. So
and you don't have
would
like
have been
a scar
the indicator.
From it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't have like a particular person by any means that I think I might have been or anything. Nothing like that. Just like if any weird ingrained fears, I would say my fear of heights is not, there's no basis in that. So I do often have dreams about trying to dial 911 and not being able to like find the buttons. Like they're not there on the phone. Like I can never call for help.
There's like a 8 and a 2 and a 3, but no 9 or 1.
Yes. Like, and ever since I was little, like I've had those kind of dreams. Like one very specific one that like started it. And it's just like, you
fell off a ladder. You have the phone in hand, but you can't reach the buttons. That's how you died. I might post this in the after party, but Alissa and I had our past life read by Psychic Alex one time after an interview. I might dig that up, dust it off, and throw it on the YouTubes for everybody to see.
I think everyone just says I'm a witch, and then it starts to hurt my feelings. No. And I'm like, yes, but that maybe I was nailed to something and persecuted for those reasons, and those are my freckles. I don't know. Do you have any more stories?
Oh, I've got a good one. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
I know you are. This is the story of Shanti Devi, and I got this information from a handy website called allthat'sinteresting.com. It says, born on December 11th, 1926, Shanti Devi appeared to be a perfectly normal baby until around the age of 4 when she began to ramble on about a past life in a town called Mathura, nearly 75 miles away. Simple events would trigger memories of this life, like eating a meal that reminded her of foods she used to enjoy in her old days, or while getting dressed, she'd tell her mother about the clothes that she used to wear. Devi eventually informed her parents that her previous name was Lugdi, and that she died shortly after bearing a son in October 1925. She added uncanny details about her labor pains and the surgical procedures that she underwent. Such facts, it seemed, couldn't have been conjured up by even the most imaginative child. Shanti recalled in startling details all the shops and streets of this town that she used to live in. She also began to speak of her husband, a merchant whose name she refused to reveal until she was about 9 years old. But she did tell her parents that he was fair, had a wart on his left cheek, and wore reading glasses.
That's hot.
Despite the unusual specificity of her memories, Shanti's parents dismissed her recollections as mere childishness. But when Shanti revealed that her husband's name was Kedar Nath, a friend of the family decided to find out if there was any truth in what she'd been saying.
Hell yeah, friend for the family.
I know, right?
Dig.
Hell yeah. The friend sent a letter to a merchant named Kedar Nath in Mathura to inquire about Shanti's unusual memories. To the friend's surprise, Nath wrote back confirming all of the details. Nath also agreed to send a relative to Shanti's home to gauge the situation. In an effort to test her knowledge, the relative was brought before Shanti first and introduced as her husband. Shanti was not fooled, though, and said, "Nope, this is her husband's cousin." Shocked, Nath and the child that he had with Ludgi, who is now 10 years old, entered the home themselves. Upon seeing them, Shanti reportedly burst into tears. Aww. Nath requested to speak with Shanti on his own, and by his own admission claimed that each response she gave to his questions was entirely accurate. He said that it was as though his dead wife was speaking. Shanti spent several days with Kedar Nath and his son before they had to return to Mathura. Saddened by their departure, she pleaded with her parents to let her take a trip to her former home. She promised that she could lead them directly to her old house, and perhaps to persuade them further, she explained that she had a box of money buried there. Eventually, her parents relented, and they boarded a train for Mathura. They set Shanti in the front of the carriage once they got there. They got off the train. They're in a carriage, and they set her in the front of the carriage and told her to direct the driver where to go. Sure enough, Shanti had no problem directing the group to what she claimed was her former home. Along the way, she noted various streets that hadn't been paved earlier and buildings that weren't there during her previous life. The driver confirmed that these observations were all correct. While exploring the house with Kedar Nath, they asked about the buried treasure that she'd mentioned. Shanti promptly ran upstairs and headed straight to a corner of the room, declaring the box was hidden beneath the floorboard. They opened up the flooring and indeed found a small coffer. It was empty. Shocked, Shanti began looking inside the hole, certain that the money was there. Kedar Nath then admitted that he'd taken the cash after his wife's death. Years later, in 1958, a newspaper reported followed up with Shanti. And at the time, she was 32 years old and had never been married and was living a quiet, spiritual life in Delhi. In 1987, Shanti Devi passed away at the age of 61.
Oh my gosh.
But possibly might be roaming around India somewhere as somebody else.
I love this idea of remembering where treasure is buried. Sign me up for that. Come on, past life. Let's do that.
What's interesting about Shanti's story is that with age, the memories didn't fade.
Yeah.
It was as if she recalled everything until her death. Recollection. An interesting stat that I had seen somewhere was that, yes, a lot of these happened with traumatic deaths of some kind, drowning, gunshot wound injury. This one was like during labor, but that the median age, I think I saved it. The median age of the people who had died was 28. So a lot of these past lives that they're remembering are from young people, not, seniors.
Well, and then actually that reminds me of the fact that I saw that it tended to be people who were remembering the last years of their life. They were remembering their death and stuff. So a lot of the time, if they were an older person in their previous life, they're not talking about their parents. They're talking about their wives and their kids and their whatever was going on in their life at the moments of their death. It wasn't like their upbringing or anything.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Ooh, that's a good one. I don't think I'd heard that one before.
This University of Virginia, the professor or doctors who have researched a lot of this, there are like at least 20 books that they can recommend of thousands of stories that they've researched and found some validation in the stories. It's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, the Dr. Tucker, I saw that, but I couldn't find any of the books, and I was like, shit.
I know, and I'm like, I'm not going to read a novel.
No, I'm like, just give me the bullet points, right?
Yeah, where's the cliff notes?
Can I wrap this up with a couple of real creepy ones? Just some creepy things that kids said?
Hell yeah, girl.
Okay, because this is what I love. My middle son used to talk about having a different mom before me. He would say she was blonde and looked nice, but wasn't nice. He would bring it up randomly and only ever got a bit emotional when he would tell me that when he was with her, he never got to grow up. He said he chose me to be his mom this time because I would let him grow up and get old. When he would say the last part, it was as if he was looking at me for reassurance. He'd ask me like, right, Mom? I can grow up this time. It really fucked me up sometimes.
Oh my God.
So
what happened?
That's fucked up. Old mommy was not nice at all.
Didn't let him grow up.
There was another one. Apparently there's actually a whole trend of like kind of kids possibly remembering 9/11 and being the reincarnated spirits of people who experienced 9/11. And one was a little girl. She was like 2 or 3 and saying, yeah, well, in my, past life, I used to work in an office, a really tall office building. There were 2 of them and the floor got really hot. And so then I had to get onto my desk, but I still couldn't get away from the heat. And so I jumped out of the window and I flew like a bird. And then the next thing I knew, I was here with you.
Whoa. Oh, I got goosebumps on that one.
Yeah. This one isn't exactly creepy. It's a bit heartwarming. I had a brother pass away from brain cancer. At the time, we had a cat that was a calico and just sort of knew he was battling something. She was real mean to most people, but with him, she was gentle. He would grab her paws and she would just let it happen. Well, about 3 years after he passed, my parents had another child, another boy. He was about 3 when he told my parents about the white, brown, and black cat that used to let him grab her paws. She had died about a year before he was born.
Whoa. Staying in the family.
That one.
Oh, that
It's a little heart. That one was heartwarming.
That is heartwarming.
Okay, so here's another one. When I was 4, my parents and I went to my aunt's farm. The wind started picking up, and I looked back at my parents and said, "Gotta tie the hay bale down in the wind. That's how David died." To this day, no one knows who David is.
What?
I think, too, some of these are like the conviction with which the child presents it is almost out of character. And so that's what's so compelling. For instance, this one, when he was around 4, my grandson used to talk about his job at the ice factory. One day he was talking about his boss, Farvo, and the day he quit. I asked him why he quit, and he turned to me and quite passionately said, "I'll tell you why I quit. They made me work 15 days in a row without a break, and I had enough of that." It was weird hearing all that righteous anger coming out of that little boy. Right? Like,
it stuck around the bitterness of having to be overworked.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Here's another creepy one. When my son was 4, we had driven past a cemetery. He asked me if I remembered when he died and was buried. I said no and asked him what he meant by saying that. He said when he had died, he was buried in a cemetery, and that's when he started growing in my belly. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up when he said this. He doesn't remember it at all.
Oh, what if we could, though? What if we could remember up into adulthood to be like, oh, that staircase there. Yeah, that's where I died. Fell and died. Of all of the stories, though, the thing that freaks me out is the one you said where the boy dies and is buried by a tree, and for 7 years, he waits by that tree until he sees his mom and says, "Hopsy daisy, let's go be a baby again." I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be lingering around.
Being stuck to the body wherever
stuck
it is.
to the body, stuck to the tree, being like, oh, finally somebody's here. Let me be a baby.
Yeah.
Like that creep. Not creep. That worries me.
I mean, purgatory. Maybe that's purgatory.
Oh, yeah. These were so fun, though, Alissa.
Can I give you one more? I'm going to end on one more. One more.
Of course.
Because I
always,
can't get enough. And
again, we can make this a 5-hour episode if we need to.
Okay. So when our son was maybe 3 or 4, he described his life as a ballerina on stage. From the lights to the music to the applause, his next words chilled me to the bone. I was at a party on a boat and I fell into the water. Then poof, I was here. I asked him to relate the story when his father came back from a business trip a couple weeks later, and it was identical. But after that, we never discussed it again. And then somebody in the comments says, Emma Livery, names a person, her costume was too heavy and she ended up sinking off the boat. One of the last romantic era ballerinas. Eerily similar.
Goosebumps, goosebumps, goosebumps. Oh, perfect. Cherry on top.
Oh my gosh. I want to hear all these stories. If you said creepy things as a kid, or like if you remembered a past life, or if your mom's, ask your mom, hey mom, did I ever say anything weird or freaky?
If you've got a child between the ages of 2 to 4, start asking some questions. Start saying, hey, do you remember your old life, your past life? What do you got for me? I have to tell Britt and Alissa.
Yeah. I mean, don't be too leading. Don't plant any seeds there. But hey, do you remember where you were before you were here?
Before I was your mommy?
Yeah.
Who was your mommy? Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Do you remember how you died? No, get right to it.
You can write those stories into our hot box at
SkeleTalesPodcast@gmail.com, or you could call them into our hotline.
302-689-DEAD, 302-689-3323. We are on all of the social medias, and you can message us over there, or just come hang out and chat with us, because we are posting up some fun stuff pretty regularly.
Yeah. You can also now subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, I think. We're over there.
Yes.
We've been posting stuff, but I also saw like a specific podcast column. So if that's something that you're interested in, go check it out.
Listen
there.
over there too, for sure. Yeah. Tell a friend.
Mm-hmm. Write a
Leave
review.
a review.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I just, even if you don't feel like writing a whole review, just anytime you rate the podcast 5 stars, it helps people really look at those little numbers and influences their choice.
I've got a new merch item up in the shop this week. I don't know if you recall a previous episode called Black Eyed Children, where we tell stories of children trying to get into your house who have pitch black eyes. Well, I have a little print that's going up into the shop that's a vintage. And I enhanced their black eyes, so they're real creepy.
That is creepy. They're like, pick me up from the side of the road.
Can we come in? That is over at SkeleTalesPodcast.etsy.
If you happen to die after listening to this podcast episode, are reincarnated as a little child, please let us know. Call in. Tell your mom to call in.
Hell yeah.
And tell us the story about how you used to listen to SkeleTales in your past life.
The average is like 18 months, right?
Yep.
So like we should be getting those emails, those phone calls here in about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, no, but then the kid has to be old enough to like talk to. So I don't know the math, but eventually we'll just say 2 years to be safe.
Yeah. Or if maybe you died 2 years ago and now you have a 2-year-old talking about us. You're 2.
And now you're 2.
Yes.
And you're listening to the podcast.
Yes, exactly that. Right on in, please. Okay, we want to hear that story.
We're ready.
All right, that was all I had.
Oh, hey, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Hunt y'all later.
Hunt y'all later. Good night. What the hell? You fucked me up.
Ya.
We reversed roles there. Oh my God. What is going on?
Good night.
Good night.